Hello and welcome to Stillwater Area Candidate Questions, which provides an opportunity for you, the voters, to hear from candidates running for Stillwater Area School District positions in the November 2022 election. I'm your host, Hal Delarosby, representing the Lake Elmo Elementary Parent-Teacher Association. Joining me today, I have Alison Sherman, who is running for re-election in one of the 4-year vacancies. Alison, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Hal. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to have this opportunity, and I'm just so excited to see our PTAs getting involved in these really important elections. So thank you.
Great. So Alison, our first question deals with growth in the district. The population within the Stillwater Area School District continues to shift, which has recently affected elementary school boundaries. Additionally, a community design team was formed in 2019 to consider the district's facilities needs and make recommendations to the school board on ways to enhance our facilities to better support our students. The design team reviewed all of the district's facilities and created a prioritized list of facility needs. A recommendation to the school board was presented in February 2020, with the top priority being rebuilding Lake Elmo Elementary School. What thoughts do you have about either future boundary changes or replacing elementary school facilities such as Lake Elmo to address the ongoing population shift occurring?
Great question. Thanks so much for asking that. I'm very familiar with the community design team recommendations, and I'm really proud to say that in my less than 2 years on the board, we have accomplished a lot of those objectives already, or a fair number, the ones that we can. And we did that by adding space in the high growth area of our district. So we added on to Brookview, and that probably should have happened a long time ago, but it's active and open now. So that's a really good thing. We have taken our Oak Park building, and we are in the process of updating it for an appropriate learning environment for our state mandated program, our bridge transitions, 18 to 21-year-olds. I'm very proud of that. And we're in the process of really exploring the feasibility of moving our alternative learning center away from the high school and back in the in the Oak Park building. And so those are 3 things that we have going on. Almost everything else in that CDT report needs to be done through a bond that will go to voters. And I think that last fall, we really had the obligation to renew our operating levy, and didn't feel it was a good idea to bring too much to the voters at one time. And also we had an interim superintendent, so we wanted to get a full-time superintendent to really kind of help craft that story, look at our facilities and our programming, and create a comprehensive plan. Obviously, the community design team had a comprehensive look at our facilities, and I really haven't seen much in there that I disagree with. The one thing I will say is that the CDT, I mean, the population shift is so immense in the southern part of our district around Lake Elmo and Woodbury, that the recommendation was not only to replace Lake Elmo, but also build a second, another school about the size of Brookview in the high growth area. So I think a lot of people think it's just replace Lake Elmo, and while Lake Elmo absolutely needs to be replaced, it's more than Lake Elmo, and it's more than just adding. So to me, it's either, are we going to build one large school with the appropriate capacity, or are we going to build 2 smaller schools? And I think that that's something that the CDT had landed on, 2 smaller schools. But I do think that that's going to be something that we're going to have to cost out and really put in detail those options before voters. But I absolutely support replacing Lake Elmo and accommodating the growth that is in that high growth area. I also think we need to look at Oakland Middle School. Oakland Middle School is well over capacity. And so even though these changes in population and demographics are recent, I do feel like we could have been planning earlier. So I guess I'd like to even go a step further and say, I think we need some more demographic studies where we can look at where are other high growth areas going to pop up next? Where can we put these new buildings, and can we move them in a location where, hey, we have some information, demographic information that is suggesting that we're going to see a high growth area in another part of our district. And so I think we need to be really looking strategically and planning ahead, so we're not in a situation like we have been in the last few years where we're already experiencing the growth and we're having to do very unnecessary or boundary changes that just don't make sense. Right now, Lake Elmo is not even in its own attendance boundary area because we've had to do some boundary changes. But I think those boundary changes were important because I think they demonstrate to the community that we are utilizing the space, our existing space, in a very thoughtful manner and responsible manner. So I absolutely support the CDT, and I think that the big thing is really looking at what I think is the #1 objective for this next board is looking at our strategic plan, and how does that strategic plan accomplish through a bond? Do we need additional levy dollars? What do we want the experience of our students and families to be in the district? And that's a really exciting thing. I mean, to create a strategic plan that can unite the entire community around some shared goals and shared opportunities. And so I would suspect that the strategic plan, once that's done in this next 6 to 9 months, that the bond and anything else that is needed will come from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next 2 questions are about the Amigos Unidos program. The Amigos Unidos dual immersion program is beginning its 6th year. The initial cohort is now in 5th grade and will be transitioning to middle school in fall 2023. Are you in favor of the district having an immersion program, and do you support its continued development into middle school and high school? Why or why not?
I have visited the Amigos Unidos program, and it's phenomenal. They're doing such amazing work there. The staff, the community, it's a really special program. I mean, honestly, I'd like to have more information reported to the board on Amigos Unidos in a formal capacity. I can't remember Amigos Unidos really coming to the board with information about is it accomplished? What are its objectives? Is it accomplishing those objectives? What supports does it need to kind of to continue to thrive? What maybe do they have that they don't need? Maybe there's some things that we're doing that are no longer helpful. I think that this is a dialogue that we have to have, and so I have already communicated that to our superintendent that I'd like to look whole scale at our special programming, evaluate why were they established? Are they meeting their objectives? How are those objectives changing? What sort of support do they need to be able to continue to thrive? And so I know very shortly we're going to be receiving information as a board for what this program is going to look like in the middle school. And I think those conversations probably should have happened a little while ago, but we had this change in leadership where we had interim superintendent and then we were hiring a new superintendent. So I feel confident that we're going to be having those conversations now as we continue to fill positions and get some stability in our district, which is key to all of these conversations. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to kind of this conversation coming before the board and hearing about what the plans are for this programming, what staff really sees as kind of the future for this programming. I'm sure there's things that we've learned in its first 6 years that we need to maybe adapt and change the way we do things. So
great, thank you.
Thank you.
The school district has 2 specialized academic programs, the Amigos Unidos Dual Immersion Program and GATE, the Gifted and Talented Education Program. Presently, the district provides transportation for all GATE students, but is limited in public transportation opportunities for Amigos Unidos students. Do you support busing across the Amigos Unidos program for all students similar to the GATE program? Why or why not?
If money were not a concern, I absolutely would support it. And I'm not saying I don't support it. I think what we need to do is come up with an equitable framework for all of our special programming. I don't personally see why we would provide transportation for one program and not another. So I guess when it comes down to it, I want to see all of our special programming evaluated, and that includes transportation. And I think that perhaps we really need to start having an attitude of how can we do things instead of why we can't. So I guess my answer would be I would want to go in thinking that we could provide transportation for both programs, but I don't. It's not my decision. A board member is literally, our only power is as a collective of 7, and we're responsible to manage to a budget. And these special programs are special programs. They serve a finite number of students, and we obviously have a commitment to do the greatest good for the greatest number. So I would like, I'm hesitant to make any commitments, but I do in general think that our special programming needs a more comprehensive evaluation, because I don't think to me, it doesn't make sense why one would have one and one would not. So I think it just comes from having a bigger conversation with the community members that are engaged in the program, and yeah, just kind of looking at the budget and what the needs are, and following through on the strategic plan, which is going to be hopefully identify all those experiences that we want to kind of elevate. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Recently, voters in our community approved a replacement levy to help stabilize the budget, which will generate about $14.7 million per year for the next 10 years. Additionally, voters in our community approved the district's first ever technological levy, commonly referred to as the tech levy, which is anticipated to generate about $4.7 million per year over the next 10 years for technology expenses. Did you support the passage of these levies last spring, and why or why not?
Yes, I supported both. I was enthusiastically supporting both. I think that it's a huge accomplishment for our community that we were able to come together and get this done for our students and families and broader community. The operating levy renewal was it was essentially a renewal plus a little bit added on there after, like the 8 to 10 years since the last one had passed. It was our last opportunity to renew this operating levy. Had we not renewed that operating levy, we would have had about $12 million in annual cuts to our operating budget. I have not heard anyone that come up with a plan on how those cuts would have been made. If we did not at least renew that operating levy, where would we have cut $12 million from? So I was not willing to not support an operating levy that was going to cut our budget, our existing budget, by 10%, or that kind of $12 million. So I absolutely supported it. I also think that it's important to know that between levies, we cut our own budgets about $7 million. And so although we did renew the operating levy and ask for a little bit more, we didn't ask for everything to cover all those cuts we've made. So we're going to have to be really strategic about what cuts have impacted the organization the most and how we can apply those dollars in a really strategic way that aligns our supports for our students. I also think the tech levy, I'm so proud of that, because this is going to be a total game changer for our students and for our staff. We're going to be able to have real-time access to student data, to interventions, and getting on top of those student achievement gaps that might be forming earlier in the process. I think that our families are going to benefit if we ever, were to have to go to some sort of distance learning environment again, which I hope that we never have to do that again, but it's going to enable us to serve our students and families that much better. So I absolutely supported that tech levy. And the great thing about the tech levy is taking that funding out of the general fund does free up another, all that money that was currently in the operating budget. I think it was about don't quote me on this, it might have been like 2.1 or 2.3 million. That then is freed up in the general fund. So that will help to, add being able to kind of identify cuts that have hurt us during those 7 million of cuts that we've made between operating levies. So we'll be able to kind of hopefully strengthen our supports and our systems for our students and families. So I absolutely supported both. I think that the one thing that we need to be careful of is that when we start talking about the bond and all the different facility needs that we have, needing to make sure that we don't fall into the situation that we had last time with our last bond. Sometimes bonds necessitate additional operating dollars that you need to make sure that you have in the budget. So I think that whatever we decide with the bond, we have to make sure that the operating levy is safe and secure at the same time. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Our last question today is a focus on the future. What do you see as either the most important challenge or the most important opportunity facing the district in the next 5 to 10 years? And what is your vision for how to either meet the challenge you identify or rise to the opportunity you identify?
So I see three immediate priorities that I have in my reelection campaign. One is the creation of the strategic plan. I feel like if we don't know where we're going or we don't identify the goals, it's really hard to achieve them. And we all want to do better for our kids. And although I believe in the strength of our school district, I think that we can do even better for our students and families. So for me, it's creating that strategic plan. And that strategic plan needs to be really specific with concrete action steps, benchmarks, indicators of progress, other components that ensure that we're aligned towards achieving the identified goals. I think that it'll also allow us to kind of dream for the future. And maybe we've had a tendency in the last 5 to 7 years to get a little bit bogged down in the past. And I think that the more we stay stuck in the past, we're kind of losing our opportunity to serve the students that are in our schools now. And so for me, this creation of the strategic plan and really following through on that plan, updating it regularly, really maybe tracking progress and trying new things. If something's not working, we have to try something else. And I think that that's really important. So that's probably the first goal. My second goal is really providing that stability and leadership. I feel so excited about our new superintendent. I think that he is going to serve us well. And that was such an important decision that was made with community involvement all the way and all the way along in the process. And I think that he's going to build a strong team. And I talk about this all the time, my son who just graduated this year, from kindergarten till 12th grade, he was leaving on his 7th superintendent in our district. And that kind of crazy roller coaster of instability impacts teachers, systems, structures, alignment gets out of whack. We just aren't able to do our best work if we're constantly changing that senior leadership, because it's usually not just the superintendent that changes, it's also the staff underneath that person. So it's really destabilizing. So I would like to provide just for that stability and leadership. And that also includes why I'm rerunning for the school board. I think that our school board needs to have some stability on it. If we're constantly changing over on school board representatives, we're kind of starting over again. So I think that that's kind of why I'm putting myself back into this for re-election, is just to continue to serve students and continue to build on the successes that we've had in really what's relatively been less than 2 years here. So I think we're on the right path. The next thing that I think is just, I think our school board we need to continue to develop a high performing school board. So getting out of the kind of day-to-day management and really looking at that governance and that goal setting and that vision, getting out in the community, understanding what our community wants for our students, what kind of experiences they desire for our students to have, and really kind of providing that vision and goal setting. I think that we've kind of had boards in the past that have been a little bit more into the management, and it hasn't worked out for our district. So just building that collaborative relationship with staff so that we can come together and really better serve our students. Our district is so phenomenal. I'm so proud of everything we do, but I think that there's so much room for improvement. So those are kind of the three areas. Longer term, and I think that this comes, and if you haven't watched it, we had a great report last night on achievement at our school board meeting. And we really talked a lot about what has happened in our district to maybe destabilize it. And our superintendent, I think, was spot on. He said it was a lack of focus in professional development, which this board has really tried to address through dedicating extra funding towards job embedded PD and other professional development activities that our teachers are really telling us they need and they want to better serve students. The other was curriculum. We have not really had a formalized curriculum adoption cycle. If you listen to that meeting, some of our curriculum is dated back to 2005. And that might be okay for some subjects, but for others, it likely isn't. And there needs to be an analysis and a thoughtful calendar put in place. And I think that constant turnover in leadership has really impacted our curriculum evaluation. And then lastly, just staffing. Are we able to find the staffing numbers that we need? And so that doesn't mean just teachers. That's paras, food service, counselors, student advocates, all of those supports around our students that really ultimately help our teachers manage the classroom. We need to find a way to kind of evaluate those staffing levels and really find a way to support our students, teachers, and families. So that's some of it. Thank you. That's a great question.
Thank you so much. This has been Alison Sherman joining me today. Thank you, Alison, so much for taking the time to share your thoughts on these questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
If you'd like to find out more about Alison's candidacy, please go to AlisonSherman834.com. That's AlisonSherman834.com, or find them on Facebook at Alison for 834. This has been Stillwater Area Candidate Questions with Hal Della-Roseby. Thank you to the viewers for taking the time to learn more about our candidates, and as always, spread joy and kindness throughout the district.